Sometimes your entire life disappears quietly, not with an explosion, not with screaming, just one cold night and one stranger watching you cry outside a hospital. The automatic doors of Mercy General slid shut behind me with a soft mechanical hiss that somehow sounded final, like the building itself had decided there was nothing left for me inside. Rain hammered the sidewalk hard enough to bounce back in silver sprays beneath the yellow parking lot lights. My sneakers soaked through within seconds, icy water creeping into my socks as I stumbled toward the curb with my backpack hanging from one shoulder and my brother's hospital bracelet still clenched in my fist. I couldn't make myself let go of it. 3 hours earlier, Caleb had still been alive. Technically, the doctors said he still was. Machines breathing for him. Machines keeping his heart moving while words like no neurological response and unlikely recovery echoed through sterile white hallways that smelled like bleach and bad coffee. 26 years old, and I suddenly had nobody left. Mom died when I was 19. Dad disappeared into gambling debt and alcohol 2 years after that. Caleb was all I had. My little brother with crooked smiles and a laugh too loud for small apartments. Caleb who worked double shifts fixing phones so I could finish nursing school. Caleb who still bought me birthday cupcakes from gas stations because he couldn't afford real cakes. And now he was upstairs connected to tubes while strangers discussed whether his organs could save someone else. My knees gave out before I even reached the street. I sat hard on the wet concrete beside the bus stop bench, ignoring the freezing rain soaking through my hoodie. Cars passed in blurry streaks of headlights and red taillights, tires hissing across slick asphalt. Nobody looked at me. Nobody stopped. Manhattan had mastered the art of pretending broken people didn't exist. I buried my face in my hands and finally let myself fall apart. Not graceful crying, not movie tears, ugly crying, the kind that makes your chest ache so badly you can't breathe right. My shoulders shook violently beneath my soaked sweatshirt as months of fear and exhaustion cracked open all at once. I don't know how long I sat there. 5 minutes, maybe 20. Time felt strange after hospitals, like clocks moved differently around grief. But eventually I became aware of something else beneath the rain. Silence, not actual silence. The city never stopped making noise, but a different kind. Heavy, intentional, the feeling of being watched. I looked up slowly. A black SUV idled across the street beneath a flickering lamppost, glossy enough to reflect the rain like dark glass. Expensive, the kind of vehicle that didn't belong near overworked nurses and vending machine dinners. The driver's side door opened. A man stepped out wearing a black wool coat over a charcoal suit tailored so perfectly it looked unreal against the storm. Tall, broad shoulders. Dark hair slicked back from a face sharp enough to belong on magazine covers instead of rainy sidewalks at 2 in the morning. He didn't rush through the rain, didn't even seem bothered by it. He crossed the street with the calm confidence of someone who expected the world to move around him. My heartbeat slowed strangely as he approached. Not calmer, worse. Like instinct itself was trying to warn me. He stopped a few feet away beneath the broken bus stop light, close enough for me to notice the faint scar near his jaw, close enough to see rain collecting on the shoulders of his coat, but it was his eyes that froze me completely, pale green, cold, controlled, the kind of eyes that looked like they had seen terrible things and survived them without apology. "You've been crying out here for almost 30 minutes, he said quietly. His voice was low, smooth, carrying the faintest trace of an Italian accent beneath polished American English. That usually means one of two things: somebody died. He glanced briefly toward the glowing hospital entrance behind me, or somebody left. I wiped my face angrily, embarrassed by how broken I must have looked. "What does it matter to you?" His gaze stayed on mine for 3 long seconds, not flirtatious, not pitying, studying me like he was trying to solve something. Then his eyes dropped to the hospital bracelet still tangled in my fingers. Something shifted in his expression, tiny, almost invisible, but enough for me to notice. "Go home, Olivia," he said softly. My stomach tightened instantly. "How do you know my name?" When you get there," he continued, voice calm enough to terrify me more than shouting ever could. "Don't open the door if the lights are off." My breath caught. Rain pounded harder around us. Somewhere down the block, thunder rolled between skyscrapers like distant drums. "What?" I whispered. But the man was already stepping backward toward the SUV again. One of the rear passenger windows lowered slightly. I caught the silhouettes of 2 other men inside wearing dark suits, watching, waiting. The stranger opened the driver's side door, then paused one final time. "My name is Vincent Marino," he said, "and if your phone rings tonight..." His eyes locked onto mine again. Answer it. Then he disappeared into the SUV. Seconds later, the vehicle pulled away from the curb and vanished into the rain, leaving me alone beneath the hospital lights with my heart pounding hard enough to hurt, and the terrible feeling that my life had just split into before and after. I stood under the hospital awning for another full minute after the SUV disappeared, staring at the empty street like Vincent Marino might somehow come back if I waited long enough. Rainwater dripped from my hair down the back of my neck, cold enough to make me shiver, but I barely felt it anymore. My brain kept replaying the same sentence over and over. Do not open the door if the lights are off. I should have ignored him. Any sane person would have. Rich men in expensive suits did not wander around hospitals at 2 in the morning warning strangers about dark apartments unless something was deeply wrong with them, or deeply wrong with the world around them. I tightened my grip on Caleb's bracelet and finally forced myself toward the subway entrance across the street. The downtown platform smelled like wet concrete and burnt coffee. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead while exhausted people avoided eye contact the way New Yorkers always did after midnight. A woman in scrubs slept against her suitcase near the vending machines. 2 college kids laughed too loudly at something on a phone screen. Normal life kept moving around me while mine felt frozen somewhere inside ICU room 814. The train ride to Queens blurred together in streaks of dark tunnel walls and reflections on scratched subway windows. I caught glimpses of myself every few seconds, swollen eyes, pale skin, wet blonde hair sticking to my cheeks. 25 years old and looking like someone who had already lost everything. My phone buzzed twice during the ride. Unknown number. Both times, I let it ring until the screen went dark. By the time I climbed the stairs onto Roosevelt Avenue, the rain had softened into a cold mist that floated through the streetlights like smoke. My apartment building stood half a block away between a laundromat and a closed-corner deli with metal gates pulled down over the windows. Old brick, flickering hallway lights, the kind of place where the radiator hissed louder than the television. Home. Except tonight it did not feel like home at all. I slowed instinctively when I reached the sidewalk across from the building. Vincent's words wrapped around my spine again like ice water. Do not open the door if the lights are off. My apartment was on the 4th floor facing the street. Usually I could see the tiny kitchen light glowing through the curtains before I even crossed the road. Tonight the windows were completely black, every single one. My stomach tightened hard enough to hurt. Maybe the power was out. Maybe I forgot to leave the lamp on. Maybe grief was making me paranoid. But my feet refused to move. A police siren wailed somewhere far away. A bus splashed through a puddle at the intersection. Still, I stood there staring up at the dark window while something cold crawled slowly through my chest. Then my phone rang again. Unknown number. My hands shook as I answered this time. Hello? Silence for 2 seconds. Then Vincent's voice, calm, controlled. My throat tightened instantly. Outside my building, good. The single word carried enough relief to make my pulse spike harder. Listen carefully, Olivia. Do not go upstairs. Fear cracked through me so sharply I nearly dropped the phone. What is happening? Look at the fire escape on the left side of the building. I turned slowly. At first I saw nothing except rusted metal slick with rain. Then movement. A shadow crossing one of the 4th floor windows. Tall. Male. Not mine. There are 2 men inside your apartment, Vincent said quietly, and neither of them are there to help you. The world tilted sideways. I stumbled backward into the cold metal bus stop sign behind me, pulse hammering violently in my ears. Who are they? I whispered. People looking for something they think your brother left behind, Caleb. My mind instantly flashed to his cracked phone sitting in my backpack, the one the hospital nurse handed me earlier along with his wallet and clothes. I do not understand, I said shakily. He was not involved in anything, I know. Vincent's voice lowered slightly. That is what makes this dangerous. A car engine rumbled softly behind me. I turned and froze. The same black SUV rolled silently to the curb beside the sidewalk. Rain shimmered across the windows beneath the streetlights. The rear passenger door opened slowly from the inside. Warm amber light spilled onto the wet pavement. Get in the car, Olivia, Vincent said through the phone. Right now. I looked back toward my apartment window one last time. Another shadow moved behind the curtains. Searching, waiting. My knees weakened instantly. How did you know they would come? Silence stretched for half a second. Then Vincent answered in the same terrifyingly calm voice. Because they came to the hospital first. My body moved before my brain did. 1 second I was standing frozen beneath the rain staring at my apartment window. and the next I was climbing into the black SUV with trembling hands and a heartbeat so loud it drowned out the city outside. The door shut behind me with a soft mechanical click that sounded terrifyingly expensive. Warm air wrapped around my freezing skin instantly, carrying the faint scent of leather and cedar wood. The inside of the vehicle looked more like a private lounge than a car. Dark leather seats, soft amber lighting, rain streaking across tinted windows thick enough to hide us completely from the street outside. Two men sat in the front wearing black suits and wired earpieces, both silent, both built like they belonged in action movies instead of Manhattan traffic. Vincent Marino sat beside me in the back seat with one hand resting loosely against his knee. Calm enough to make my panic feel almost embarrassing, he had removed his coat sometime during the drive over. The charcoal suit underneath fit him perfectly, sharp lines and dark fabric against pale skin and those impossible green eyes that missed absolutely nothing. The SUV pulled away from the curb so smoothly I barely felt it move. I stared out the rain-covered window as my apartment building disappeared behind us. My apartment, my clothes, Caleb's things. My entire life sitting 4 floors above a laundromat while strangers searched through it in the dark. "Who are they?" I asked again, my voice cracking harder this time. Vincent looked at me for a long moment before answering. "Men who believe your brother had something valuable. He repaired phones," I snapped, fear twisting into anger because anger felt easier to survive. "He worked 60 hours a week and forgot to pay parking tickets. He was not hiding government secrets." One corner of Vincent's mouth moved slightly, more like recognition of something human. "Most people who become dangerous do not realize it immediately," he said. "That is usually why they do not survive it." The sentence landed cold in my chest. I turned toward him fully for the first time since entering the SUV. "Stop talking to me like that." His gaze stayed steady on mine. "Like what? Like you already know how this ends." Silence stretched between us while rain hammered softly against the roof overhead. Outside, Manhattan blurred into streaks of glowing signs and wet sidewalks. Finally, Vincent leaned back slightly against the leather seat. "Your brother witnessed something 3 nights ago." My stomach tightened instantly. "No, Olivia." "No," I repeated louder. Caleb barely left work and home. He hated trouble. He crossed streets to avoid arguments. Vincent watched me carefully, and yet someone searched his hospital room tonight after he was admitted. Every muscle in my body locked. "What?" A nurse interrupted them around midnight. "They claimed to be maintenance workers." His expression darkened slightly. "They were not." My mind reeled backward through the past 48 hours. Caleb collapsing near the subway station. The unexplained head injury doctors could not fully explain. The police officer at the hospital asking strange questions about whether Caleb had enemies. At the time it all felt random. Now it felt connected in ways I did not want to understand. "What did he see?" I whispered. Vincent glanced briefly toward the front windshield before answering. "We do not know yet, we." The single word hit me immediately. "You keep saying we." His eyes returned to mine slowly, "because I am trying to find it too." Fear crawled higher up my spine. "You are involved in this?" "Yes." The honesty startled me more than denial would have. "Why would you tell me that?" "Because lying to frightened people wastes time." My breath caught somewhere between panic and disbelief. "You are insane." Another tiny almost smile crossed his face. "Probably." The SUV turned sharply beneath an overpass before entering a quieter part of the city where the buildings grew taller and cleaner. Expensive glass towers replaced corner stores and laundromats. The kind of neighborhood where nobody looked tired because everyone could afford not to be. My phone buzzed suddenly in my lap. Unknown number again. Vincent's eyes dropped to the screen instantly. "Answer it," he said. I swallowed hard before pressing accept. Static crackled softly through the speaker, then a man's voice. Calm, older. "Miss Carter." Every hair on my arms rose immediately. "Who is this? You have something that belongs to us." My pulse stumbled violently. "I do not know what you are talking about." The man ignored that completely. "Leave Mr. Marino's vehicle now, and this becomes easier for everyone." Cold terror flooded my stomach as I looked toward Vincent. His face changed instantly at the sound of the voice. Not fear, something colder, more dangerous. "Do not respond," he said quietly. The man on the phone laughed softly like he had heard him anyway. "Vincent." The name slid through the speaker with disturbing familiarity. "You always did mistake attachment for weakness." Then the call disconnected. Silence swallowed the SUV completely. Rain tapped softly against the windows while my hands shook uncontrollably around the phone. Vincent stared out at the dark street ahead for 2 long seconds before speaking. Change of plans. One of the men in front instantly touched his earpiece. Location. Vince's eyes stayed fixed on the city outside. Take us to the penthouse. Then he looked directly at me again, voice calm enough to terrify me all over again. Because now they know where you are. The closer we got to downtown Manhattan, the quieter the city became. Fewer people on sidewalks, fewer neon signs, everything cleaner, sharper, like money itself had pushed the noise away. I sat rigid against the leather seat with Caleb's cracked phone clenched tightly in my lap while rain slid across the tinted windows beside me in silver streams. Nobody in the SUV spoke for nearly 10 minutes after the phone call. The silence felt heavy enough to bruise. Vincent remained beside me with one arm resting loosely against the door, calm and unreadable while the city lights flashed across his face in brief streaks of gold and white. I kept stealing glances at him despite myself. At the expensive watch beneath his cuff, the scar near his jaw, the impossible stillness in the way he moved. Men like Vincent Marino were not supposed to exist outside movies and headlines. Yet somehow I had ended up trapped in a car with one at 3 in the morning while strangers searched my apartment and threatened me through anonymous phone calls. My entire life had become unrecognizable in less than 6 hours. The SUV finally turned beneath a private underground entrance hidden beside one of the tallest glass towers I had ever seen. Security gates slid open immediately without the driver even slowing down. Cameras tracked the vehicle overhead. 2 guards in black coats stood near the elevator lobby with the kind of posture that screamed military training even without weapons visible. One of them nodded. The second Vincent stepped out of the SUV. "Sir." Vincent gave a slight nod back before looking toward me. Stay close, I should have refused. Every survival instinct I had left screamed that following this man deeper into his world was a catastrophic mistake, but the memory of shadows moving inside my apartment still crawled beneath my skin. I followed him into the private elevator anyway. The doors closed softly behind us. Marble walls, gold trim, no buttons except a fingerprint scanner beneath the panel. Vincent pressed his thumb against it without speaking. The elevator rose silently. Fast enough to make my stomach shift slightly. I folded my arms tightly across my chest, suddenly hyper-aware of how soaked and exhausted I looked standing beside him. My hoodie, still damp from the rain, mascara smudged beneath my eyes. Cheap sneakers leaving faint watermarks against polished marble floors. Vincent noticed me staring downward. "You are safe here," he said quietly. "That is not what scares me." His eyes lifted toward mine slowly. For one strange second, something softer flickered there. Not weakness, more like understanding. "It should," he admitted. The elevator doors opened directly into a penthouse so massive my brain struggled to process it at first. Floor-to-ceiling windows wrapped around the entire living space overlooking Manhattan like the city itself belonged to him. Warm amber lights reflected against black marble floors. A fireplace flickered softly near a white grand piano that probably cost more than my entire apartment building. Everything smelled faintly of cedarwood and expensive coffee. Quiet jazz played somewhere in the background, low enough to barely exist. I stopped walking entirely. "This is your apartment?" Vincent loosened the cuffs of his shirt slightly as he crossed the room. "One of them." The answer landed somewhere between absurd and terrifying. A woman around my age appeared from a hallway wearing tailored black slacks and a dark hair pulled neatly into a bun. She looked at me first with obvious concern before turning toward Vincent. "I prepared the guest suite," she said softly, "and food if she wants it." "Thank you, Sophia." She disappeared again almost silently. I stood frozen near the elevator while my brain tried to catch up with reality. Guest suite, private guards, multiple apartments. Men hunting me in the middle of the night while this man discussed safety protocols like weather forecasts. "Who are you really?" I asked quietly. Vincent poured himself a glass of water from a crystal decanter near the kitchen island before answering. "Someone your brother crossed with accidentally. That is not an answer." He took a slow sip before finally looking at me again. "No, it is the only safe version of one." Frustration burned through my exhaustion instantly. "You keep talking in riddles while my brother is in a hospital bed and strangers are tearing apart my apartment looking for something I do not even understand." My voice cracked harder with every word. I deserve more than cryptic warnings. Vincent stared at me for a long moment, then his gaze dropped toward the cracked phone still clutched tightly in my hands. "May I see it?" Instinctively I pulled it closer to my chest. "No." Something almost like approval flickered across his face again. "Good," he said quietly. "Do not trust anyone with it." My pulse skipped violently. "There is something on this phone." Vincent did not answer immediately. That silence terrified me more than words would have. He crossed slowly toward the windows overlooking the city, one hand sliding into his pocket while lightning flickered far beyond the skyline. "Olivia," he said finally, voice low and controlled, "there are people in this city who would burn entire lives to protect secrets." He turned back toward me slowly. "Tonight your brother became one of those secrets." The room suddenly felt colder despite the fire still burning nearby. I stared down at Caleb's cracked phone resting in my trembling hands while a terrible realization unfolded quietly inside my chest. Whatever happened to my brother had not been random, and neither was Vincent Marino. I did not sleep. I tried. Around 4 in the morning, Sophia showed me to a guest suite bigger than my entire apartment, with cream-colored walls, a king-sized bed, and windows overlooking the East River glowing silver beneath the storm clouds. Fresh clothes had been folded neatly on the bed beside a toothbrush still inside its packaging, like somebody had prepared for disasters in advance. But every time I closed my eyes, I saw shadows moving behind my apartment curtains. Caleb lying motionless beneath hospital lights. Vincent standing beneath the rain outside Mercy General watching me cry like he already knew my life was about to collapse. So instead of sleeping, I sat curled in the corner of the massive bed wearing borrowed sweatpants while Caleb's cracked phone rested in my hands. The screen flickered every few minutes like the battery was struggling to survive. I had tried unlocking it twice already with his birthday code. Nothing. Password changed. That alone made my stomach tighten. Caleb never changed passwords. He wrote everything down in a notebook because he claimed technology stressed him out even though he repaired phones for a living. Around 5:30, sunlight began creeping slowly through the windows in pale gray streaks. Manhattan looked strangely peaceful from 40 stories above the city, like bad things could not possibly happen here. A soft knock interrupted the silence. Before I could answer, the door opened slightly and Sophia stepped inside carrying a tray with coffee and toast. "You should eat something," she said gently. I glanced toward the untouched bed beside me. "What time did you go to sleep?" Her expression shifted carefully. Mr. Marino did not sleep either. Something about that answer unsettled me more than it should have. Sophia set the tray down before hesitating near the doorway. "He is not what people say." I looked up sharply. "People say things about him?" The faintest almost smile crossed her face. "You do not become Vincent Marino without stories following you." Before I could ask anything else, she quietly disappeared again. I stared down at the untouched coffee while her words echoed in my head. Stories. Of course there were stories. Men with private elevators and armed security did not build lives like this through honesty and tax returns. My phone suddenly vibrated against the nightstand so violently I nearly dropped Caleb's device. Unknown caller again. My pulse spiked instantly. I answered carefully. "Hello, Miss Carter," a female voice this time, professional, calm. "This is Mercy General Hospital calling regarding your brother. Fear hit so fast it physically hurt. What happened? Nothing has changed medically. But there is an issue with authorization paperwork for his care. We need you to come in today." Relief mixed instantly with confusion. "I can come this morning." Silence. Papers shuffled softly on the other end. "Actually," the nurse hesitated strangely, "ought appears to have been revoked." My stomach dropped. "What?" "The system shows legal transfer of medical authority approximately 2 hours ago." The room tilted sideways. "That is impossible. I am his only family." "I understand, Miss Carter, but according to hospital records, someone with legal representation filed emergency custodial documents overnight." I spread slowly through my chest. "Who?" Another pause. "Vincent Marino." The phone nearly slipped from my hand. "No," I whispered immediately. "No, that is wrong. You will need to discuss that with his legal team directly." Then the line disconnected. I sat frozen on the edge of the bed, staring. Panic flooded every inch of my body. He lied to me, every warning, every calm, reassuring sentence, all of it manipulation. The bedroom door opened again before I could move. Vincent stepped inside wearing a black dress shirt with the sleeves rolled neatly to his forearms, dark hair still damp like he had just showered. He stopped immediately when he saw my face. "What happened?" Rage exploded through my exhaustion so fast it shocked even me. I stood so abruptly the chair beside the bed scraped loudly across the floor. "You filed legal control over my brother?" Vincent's expression changed instantly. Not guilt, irritation. "The hospital called you. Answer the question." His jaw tightened slightly. "Yes, my chest physically hurt. You had no right." "Actually, I did." The calmness in his voice made everything worse. Your brother was flagged overnight by federal investigators connected to an active organized crime inquiry. Without intervention, he would have disappeared into protective custody before sunrise. I stared at him in disbelief. You think this makes sense? No. He stepped slightly closer. My breathing turned shallow. Who are you? The question came out smaller this time, more broken than angry. Vincent held my gaze for several long seconds before finally answering. A man trying to stop powerful people from finding what your brother accidentally stole. My pulse stumbled. Caleb stole something? Not intentionally. Vincent nodded toward the cracked phone still resting in my hands. But whatever is inside that device... His eyes darkened slightly. People are already willing to destroy lives for it. The room fell completely silent around us. Somewhere beyond the penthouse windows, helicopters moved across the skyline while morning sunlight climbed slowly over Manhattan. But all I could hear was my own heartbeat and one terrifying realization unfolding quietly inside my chest. Caleb had not just witnessed something dangerous. Somehow, he had taken proof of it with him. The next 2 hours passed like a blur, wrapped in expensive silence. Vincent left the guest suite after our argument without another word, and somehow that unsettled me more than if he had stayed. I paced the enormous bedroom barefoot while Manhattan glowed beyond the windows in cold silver daylight. Every few minutes, I checked Caleb's phone again, hoping something would magically unlock itself. But the screen remained frozen behind the password prompt like it was guarding secrets even from me. Around 9 in the morning, Sophia returned carrying fresh coffee and a small stack of folded clothes. Jeans, a cream sweater, white sneakers still inside the box. My size. I cannot accept these, I said immediately. Sophia placed them carefully on the chair anyway, Mr. Marino insisted. I laughed softly under my breath, exhausted and bitter. Does he insist on everything? Her expression changed slightly. Usually people do not survive telling him no. The answer sat heavily in the room after she left. I stared down at the untouched clothes while my stomach tightened again. Every person in this building spoke about Vincent the same way people talked about storms. Calmly, respectfully. Like resisting him was pointless once he arrived. By 10:30 I could not take it anymore. I left the bedroom and followed the sound of quiet voices through the penthouse hallway until I reached a massive office overlooking the river. The doors stood partially open. Vincent sat behind a dark wooden desk, speaking softly into an earpiece, while 3 men in suits stood nearby studying security footage projected across multiple screens. One image instantly caught my attention, my apartment building. My breath stopped. Grainy black and white footage showed 2 men entering the front door around 2:17 a.m., their faces partially hidden beneath baseball caps. One carried something metallic in his hand. Freeze frame, Vincent said calmly. The image stopped instantly. Zoom the hallway camera. The picture sharpened slightly. I recognized my apartment door immediately. One of the men looked directly toward the security camera before the feed suddenly cut to static. My stomach twisted violently. Vincent noticed me standing there before anyone else did. "Leave us," he said quietly. The other men disappeared without hesitation. Even the silence around Vincent obeyed him. I folded my arms tightly across my chest. "You had people watching my building?" "Yes." "Before or after I got there?" "Befores." Fear crawled slowly beneath my skin again. "You knew something was going to happen." Vincent removed the earpiece carefully before answering. "I suspected. Stop doing that." My voice cracked sharply through the lawyer. "Stop." For the first time since meeting him, real frustration flashed across his face. Small, brief, but real. "You want honesty?" He stood slowly from behind the desk. "Fine." Someone inside my organization learned that a witness can accidentally recorded a private meeting. My pulse stumbled. Caleb. Vincent nodded once. The recording disappeared before recovery teams reached him. Recovery teams? The people who caused the accident. The room suddenly felt too small to breathe in. "You said it was not random." It was not. My knees weakened slightly beneath me. Caleb had not simply collapsed near a subway station like doctors originally claimed. Somebody caused it. Somebody wanted whatever was on that phone badly enough to destroy lives over it. "What was on the recording?" I whispered. Vincent's jaw tightened slightly. Names, financial routes, federal officials accepting payments. My chest physically hurt, trying to process it. "You are talking about corruption. I am talking about an empire worth billions of dollars." His voice lowered dangerously. "And men who protect it." I stared at him in disbelief. "Then why are you helping me?" Silence stretched between us again. Vincent walked slowly toward the windows overlooking Manhattan before speaking. Because the people searching for your brother's phone no longer answer to rules. And you do? The question slipped out before I could stop it. Vincent turned toward me slowly. Sunlight cut across one side of his face while the city burned gold behind him. I do not hurt innocent people, Olivia. The calm certainty in his voice unsettled me more than anger would have. That does not answer who you are. No. He slid one hand into still alive. My heartbeat thudded heavily against my ribs. Somewhere deep down, beneath the fear and exhaustion and confusion, I realized something terrifying. I believed him. Not because he looked trustworthy. Men like Vincent Marino did not become powerful by being trustworthy, but because every warning he gave me had already come true. My apartment searched, Caleb targeted. Unknown callers, hospital records changed overnight. Vincent had seen all of it before it happened, which meant he was either protecting me or standing much closer to the danger than I understood. A soft vibration interrupted the silence. Vincent pulled his phone from his pocket and glanced at the screen. Instantly, his expression darkened. "What?" I asked quietly. He did not answer immediately. His eyes remained fixed on the message for 2 long seconds before he looked up at me again. "Your apartment building caught fire 20 minutes ago." The blood drained completely from my face. "What?" "Electrical fire," he said calmly, though something colder moved beneath the words. "At least that is what the news will call it." I stared at him in horror. Everything I owned, Caleb's clothes, family photos, Mum's old jewelry box, gone, just gone. My breathing turned shallow instantly as shock hit all at once. Vincent crossed the room slowly toward me. "Olivia," I shook my head hard. "No, listen to me, no!" My voice cracked loudly enough to echo against the office walls. "You said you were helping me." Vincent stopped directly in front of me, close enough that I could smell cedarwood and espresso on his shirt. "I am." His voice stayed impossibly calm. "Because if you had gone upstairs last night," he held my gaze steadily, "you would have been inside that building when the fire started." I stopped hearing the rest of what Vincent said after that. My apartment building was gone. The place where Caleb and I survived every terrible year after our mother died had turned into smoke and ash, while I stood inside a penthouse 40 stories above Manhattan, arguing with a man who seemed to know disasters before they happened. My legs weakened suddenly beneath me, Vincent steadying my arm before I could stumble backward. His hand was warm, controlled, careful. Not the rough grip I expected from someone like him. Somehow that made everything hurt worse. I pulled away immediately. "Do not touch me." The words came out shaking. Vincent released me with "outing is gone." My throat burned painfully as I tried to breathe through the pressure crushing my chest. Every photo, every memory. Caleb's things, my mother's letters. I pressed both hands against my forehead, trying to stop the room from spinning. I do not even have a toothbrush anymore. Silence settled heavily between us. Vincent watched me for several long seconds before speaking quietly. "You are alive," I laughed once under my breath. "Broken, exhausted. That is supposed to make me feel better?" His expression did not change eventually. The calm certainty in his voice almost made me angry again. How could someone sound so steady while my entire life collapsed piece by piece around me? I turned away from him sharply and walked toward the massive windows overlooking the city. Fire trucks moved far below like tiny red insects through Manhattan traffic. Somewhere down there, people were probably standing outside my building watching smoke pour from broken windows, while reporters repeated phrases like accidental electrical malfunction. Nobody would know 2 strangers had searched my apartment hours before it happened. "Tell me the truth," I whispered finally. "All of it." I heard him exhale slowly behind me. "You already know the important part." "No." I turned back toward him. "I know people are trying to destroy evidence connected to Caleb. I know somehow you are involved. And I know every time I ask a direct question, you answer like a man negotiating a hostage exchange." Something unexpectedly human flickered across his face at that. Tiredness, maybe. Fair criticism. "Then stop protecting me from the truth." Vincent stared at me silently before finally walking toward the desk near the windows. He opened a locked drawer and removed a thin black folder. "3 nights ago," he said quietly, "your brother repaired a phone belonging to a man connected to my organization." My pulse slowed instantly. What kind of organization? The kind people pretend does not exist while using its money every day. My stomach tightened again. Vincent placed the folder carefully on the desk between us. Inside were photographs, luxury hotels, shipping yards, men in expensive suits entering government buildings, politicians shaking hands with people whose faces had been partially blacked out. "This is not just organized crime," I whispered. Vincent's eyes stayed on mine. "No," he pointed toward one blurry security image near the bottom of the folder. A dark parking garage. Caleb stood near the edge of the frame beside a repair kiosk. Another man stood several feet away, speaking intensely into a Bluetooth earpiece. The device Caleb repaired recorded a private conversation accidentally, Vincent explained. Financial transfers, names. Federal judges accepting payments. My chest tightened, and Caleb heard it. Worse, Vincent's voice lowered slightly. The phone automatically uploaded the recording before anyone realized. I looked back down at the cracked device still sitting in my hands. Understanding hit slowly, horribly. This phone. Vincent nodded once. "The upload location is encrypted. Whoever unlocks the phone finds the recording." My fingers tightened instinctively around it, and everyone thinks Caleb hid it intentionally. Yes. A cold silence filled the room. Outside the windows, sunlight reflected against skyscrapers bright enough to hurt my eyes. Somewhere below us, the city kept moving normally while invisible wars unfolded beneath expensive suits and government offices. "So what happens now?" I asked quietly. Vincent's expression darkened slightly. "Now they stop searching apartments." Fear crawled slowly back into my chest. "What does that mean?" "It means they start searching people." My stomach dropped. "You mean me?" "Yes." The honesty hit harder every time. No sugarcoating, no false comfort. Just truth delivered calmly enough to terrify me. I wrapped my arms tightly around myself against the sudden cold creeping beneath my skin. "Then why not hand me over?" The question escaped before I could stop it. Vincent went completely still. "What?" "You said this recording threatens powerful people. You said they are destroying lives to find it." My voice shook harder now. "So why protect me?" For the first time since I met him, Vincent looked genuinely caught off guard by a question. Not angry, not calculating, just still. Then slowly, almost reluctantly, he answered, "Because your brother was not supposed to get hurt." The room fell silent again. Something heavy moved beneath those words, something darker than guilt. My heartbeat slowed painfully. "You knew this could happen before it did." Vincent looked away toward the city for half a second before meeting my eyes again. "I knew people inside my organization were becoming reckless." "Organization," I repeated quietly. "You keep saying that instead of saying Mafia." He did not deny it. The silence itself became the answer. A strange numbness spread slowly through me after that. Not shock anymore, something worse. Acceptance. Because deep down I already knew no normal businessman had armed guards outside his penthouse or enough power to alter hospital records before sunrise. Vincent Marino was exactly the kind of man newspapers warned people about, the kind mothers crossed streets to avoid, and somehow he was the only reason I was still alive. That night the penthouse felt less like a home and more like a fortress floating above Manhattan. Men in dark suits moved quietly through hallways, speaking into earpieces, while security screens glowed softly inside the office near the elevator. Every locked door, every camera, every silent guard reminded me that Vincent Marino did not simply live differently from normal people. He lived prepared for war. By evening, my exhaustion had settled deep into my bones like concrete. I had not truly slept in almost 36 hours. But every time I closed my eyes, images crashed together behind them. Flames climbing the side of my apartment building. Caleb unconscious beneath hospital lights. Vincent standing beneath the rain outside Mercy General, watching me like he already knew my world was ending. Around 8 o'clock, Sophia convinced me to eat soup in the kitchen overlooking the skyline. The room alone was larger than the entire first floor of my old building. Black marble counters, soft pendant lighting, floor-to-ceiling windows glowing gold against the dark city outside. Somewhere downstairs hummed faintly through the glass like distant ocean waves. "You should try sleeping tonight," Sophia said gently, while pouring tea into a porcelain cup. I stared blankly at the steam rising between us. I do not think my brain remembers how. Something sad flickered across her face. "This life does that to people." I looked up immediately. "You mean Vincent's life?" Sophia hesitated for half a second too long. "I mean surviving around powerful men." Before I could ask anything else, voices echoed faintly from the hallway beyond the kitchen. Male voices, low, sharp. One belonged to Vincent. Even exhausted, I recognized the calm authority in it instantly. "No one outside this floor enters without my approval," he said coldly. Another man answered quietly, too muffled for me to understand. Vincent spoke again. "I do not care what the council wants. Council, The word tightened something deep in my stomach. Sophia looked toward the hallway immediately before lowering her voice. "You should go upstairs. Who is he talking to?" "Olivia." Her tone sharpened slightly for the first time. "Please, I should have listened." Instead, I moved silently toward the partially open doorway leading into the hall. Vincent stood near the office entrance wearing a dark sweater instead of his usual tailored jacket, one hand braced against the wall beside him, while three older men faced him across the marble floor. Expensive suits, silver watches, faces hard with age and power. One of them noticed me instantly. His eyes narrowed slightly before shifting toward Vincent. "This is the girl." Every muscle in Vincent's body tightened subtly. He stepped sideways without even looking at me, blocking me from their direct view almost automatically. "Enough," he said quietly. The older man gave a humorless smile. "You are risking everything for a witness you barely know. She is not a witness." Vincent's voice turned colder. "She is under my protection." Silence followed that sentence, heavy, dangerous. The men exchanged brief glances before the oldest among them spoke carefully. "You are Vincent," Jaw tightened sharply. "Leave." No shouting, no threats. Just one word spoken softly enough to freeze the entire hallway. The three men stared at him for another tense second before finally turning toward the elevator without another argument. The doors closed behind them with a quiet metallic hiss. Vincent remained completely still for several seconds afterward. One hand pressed against the bridge of his nose like exhaustion had finally caught him too. "You should not listen to conversations that are not yours," he said finally without turning around. Guilt flickered through me instantly. I was not trying to spy. No. He glanced back toward me over his shoulder. "You were trying to survive." The honesty in his voice unsettled me again. Vincent slowly loosened his collar before walking toward the kitchen. I followed a few steps behind without thinking. Who were they? He reached for the whiskey bottle near the counter but paused before pouring anything. "Men who think fear is the same thing as leadership. And you disagree." Vincent stared down at the untouched glass in his hand for a long moment. "Fear works," he admitted quietly, "until someone has nothing left to lose." The words hit harder than they should have, because suddenly I realized he was not talking about himself. He was talking about me. Silence settled gently between us after that. Softer this time, less hostile. Rain had started again outside, tapping quietly against the glass while lightning flickered beyond the skyline. I wrapped my arms around myself against the cold creeping beneath my skin. Vincent noticed immediately. Without a word, he removed the charcoal suit jacket hanging over the nearby chair and handed it to me. I hesitated. "It is dry," he said simply. The jacket smelled faintly like cedarwood and clean cologne when I slipped it over my shoulders. Warm, heavy. Safe in a way that terrified me more than danger should have. Vincent watched me carefully for one strange silent moment before looking away toward the city again. "You should sleep," he said quietly. "I will stay awake." "Why?" His expression darkened slightly against the rain-streaked windows. "Because the people looking for that phone do not stop when the sun goes down." My chest tightened again. "Neither do you." A tired, almost smile touched his face for the briefest second. "No," he admitted softly. "Neither do I." Then suddenly every emotion I had been holding together since the hospital cracked all at once. My breathing turned shallow. My hands started trembling violently inside the sleeves of his jacket. I looked away quickly, embarrassed by the tears burning behind my eyes again. But Vincent noticed anyway. Of course he noticed. He crossed the kitchen slowly before lowering himself into the chair across from me instead of standing over me like I expected. "Olivia." His voice softened carefully. "Breathe." I shook my head hard, panic tightening painfully through my chest. "I cannot." "Yes, you can." Calm, steady, controlled. "Look at me." I tried not to, tried to focus on the rain instead, but eventually my eyes lifted toward his. Pale green beneath the kitchen lights, sharp enough to terrify entire rooms, yet somehow impossibly patient with me. "Inhale slowly," he said quietly. 4 seconds, my lungs fought me at first. Then gradually the panic loosened enough for air to return. Vincent stayed there the entire time, silent, watching carefully to make sure I kept breathing, not touching me, not rushing me, just staying, and somewhere deep beneath the fear and exhaustion and grief, a far more dangerous feeling began unfolding quietly inside my chest. For the first time since my life fell apart, I did not feel completely alone. I finally fell asleep sometime after 2 in the morning, curled sideways on the enormous guest bed with Vincent's jacket still wrapped around my shoulders. The city lights outside blurred into soft gold streaks through half-closed eyes while rain whispered quietly against the windows. For the first time in 2 days, my breathing had stopped shaking, maybe because exhaustion finally won. Maybe because somewhere beyond the locked bedroom door, Vincent Marino was still awake, guarding a world that wanted me erased. The nightmare started anyway. Flames climbing apartment walls. Caleb reaching toward me from a hospital bed while alarms screamed somewhere far away. Men without faces searching through smoke with flashlights, while Vincent stood motionless beneath the fire escape watching everything burn. I woke violently before sunrise with my heart slamming painfully against my ribs. Sweat dampened the back of my neck despite the cold air inside the room. For one terrible second I forgot where I was. Then the skyline outside the windows came back into focus. The penthouse. The guards. Reality settled heavily over me all over again. I rubbed both hands across my face and sat up slowly. The digital clock beside the bed read 4:37 a.m. Sleep was impossible after that. I reached instinctively beneath the pillow for Caleb's cracked phone, staring at the black screen while silence filled the massive room around me. "Come on," I whispered softly. My thumb hovered over the lock screen again. Caleb never used complicated passwords. Favorite baseball teams, birthdays. I had already tried all of them, but something about the dream lingered strangely in my head. Flames, smoke, fire escape. I frowned slightly before typing our old apartment number from when we were kids, 814. The phone unlocked instantly. For a second I just stared at the screen in disbelief while my pulse hammered violently in my ears. Then panic hit all at once. Oh my God. I scrambled off the bed so fast the blankets tangled around my legs. The device shook violently in my hands as I opened the files folder. Hundreds of repair receipts, photos, voice notes, random screenshots Caleb probably forgot to delete. Then one unlabeled video file sitting alone near the bottom of the screen. Uploaded 3 nights ago at 11:42 p.m. My stomach tightened painfully. This was it, the thing people were burning lives to find. I should have taken it straight to Vincent immediately. Instead, I pressed play first. The video opened sideways at first, blurry and dark like the camera had been recording accidentally inside a jacket pocket. Male voices echoed somewhere nearby. Expensive shoes crossing concrete, a parking garage maybe. Then the image shifted suddenly. A face appeared clearly for half a second beneath fluorescent lights. My blood turned to ice instantly. Vincent Marino. I froze completely. He stood beside a black SUV, wearing the same cold expression I had already memorized too well. Another man spoke somewhere off camera. "The judge signed everything this morning," Vincent answered calmly. "Then move the shipment before federal review begins." My breathing stopped. More voices overlapped after that. Numbers, accounts, shipping routes. The camera shook violently as whoever carried the phone moved quickly around a corner. Then the recording cut off abruptly. Silence crashed through the bedroom around me. My hands trembled so badly I nearly dropped the phone. Vincent was involved, not adjacent to it. Not trying to stop it from the outside, involved. Every warning, every protection, every calm, reassuring conversation suddenly twisted into something darker. He did not rescue me from this world. He was this world. A soft knock sounded suddenly at the bedroom door and I jumped so hard my heart physically hurt. "Olivia?" Vincent's voice, calm, close. "Are you awake?" Panic exploded through me instantly. I backed away from the door, clutching the phone tightly against my chest, while my brain scrambled desperately for clarity. Maybe the recording was old. Maybe there was context. Maybe no. I had seen his face, heard his voice. Heard him discussing shipments and judges like it was ordinary business. The doorknob turned slowly. "Olivia?" I looked wildly around the room, searching for somewhere to hide the phone before realizing how insane that thought was. This was his penthouse, his security, his world. There was nowhere to hide anything from Vincent Marino. The bedroom door opened softly a few inches. Vincent stood there wearing a dark sweater and grey slacks, his hair slightly damp like he had showered recently. He stopped instantly when he saw my face. Every instinct inside him seemed to sharpen at once. "What happened?" I stepped backward immediately. "Do not come closer." His eyes narrowed slightly. "Olivia, you lied to me." My voice cracked hard enough to hurt. Vincent went completely still. Then his gaze dropped slowly toward the phone, shaking in my hands. Understanding crossed his face instantly. Not panic, worse, resignation. Silence stretched painfully between us while the city outside remained dark and quiet beneath the approaching dawn. Finally, Vincent spoke very softly. "You opened the file." Tears burned behind my eyes immediately. "You were there." He did not deny it. That hurt more than anything else could have. "Everything you said about protecting Caleb," I whispered shakily. "About innocent people." Vincent's jaw tightened sharply. "Olivia, listen to me carefully." "No," I shook my head hard. "You do not get to stand there pretending you are different from the people hunting us." Something dangerous flickered briefly behind his eyes, then disappeared just as quickly. I never pretended to be innocent. The honesty landed like a knife straight through my chest because, deep down, I realized he was telling the truth.